Jeremiah chapter 5 Introduction. This chapter explains the pathetic situation of the people of Judah who were so inexcusable for their many sins that they cannot plead innocence. We will study this chapter under the following divisions. 1. The reasons for the Lord's punishment, verses 1 to 9. 2. The people refused to believe Jeremiah's message, verses 10 to 14. 3. The coming of a terrible enemy, verses 15 to 19. 4. The foolish people who forgot the Lord's power, verses 20 to 25. 5. The sins of the people, verses 26 to 31. The reasons for the Lord's punishment, verses 1 to 9. God searches for a righteous man, verses 1 2. God here permits the whole world to inquire diligently and carefully of the state of the holy city of Jerusalem. It seems worse than Sodom and Gomorrah, for God condescends to pardon Jerusalem if there be but one righteous man found in it. There, God came no lower than 10. It shows God's great love and affection for His chosen people. But in spite of repeated and constant pleading with them to return to Him, the people continued in their stubborn rebellion. There was none among the magistracy that rightly administered justice, and among the commonalty that sought the truth and dealt faithfully and uprightly. They abused the name of God, and their worship to God was insincere. Verse 2. The nation was morally ruined. Corruption prevailed everywhere. So, God could find no other mode of treating them but to denounce utter ruin on His people. The learned as well as the ignorant are evil. Verses 3 to 5. The prophet, observing the obstinacy of this people, abruptly turns himself to God in verse 3, saying, O Lord, are not thine eyes upon the truth? The Lord had quoted and chastised them with afflictive providences. Yet they remained obstinate and incorrigible. They willfully rejected counsel and slighted correction, resolving to persist in their obstinacy. In verse 4, Jeremiah said that the common people were so infatuated with idols and ignorant that they did not know the way of God or the judgment of their God. So, in verse 5, Jeremiah decides to go and speak with the great men, thinking that their rank in society gave them opportunities to know the way of the Lord and the judgment of their God. But the great men had acted above the law and have trampled all moral obligations under their feet. The yoke of the law and the bonds of His precepts with which they were bound were broken. They transgressed and rejected them. The nature of the enemy, verse 6. Wherefore a lion out of the forest shall slay them, and a wolf of the evenings shall spoil them. A leopard shall watch over their cities. Every one that goeth out thence shall be torn in pieces, because their transgressions are many, and their backslidings are increased. This language is metaphorical. The three forms of animal ferocity, lion, wolf, leopard, representing fierceness, ravenousness, and cunningness, are brought together to embody the cruelty of the invader. These wild and dangerous animals metaphorically represent the Babylonians whom the Lord was shortly to bring against Judah. Nebuchadnezzar was called here a lion for his strength, courage, and violence, a bear for its rapaciousness and greediness, and a leopard for its swiftness, vigilancy, and subtlety. Jarchi and Jerome applies the animals to the several monarchies, the lion to the kingdom of Babylon, the wolf to the kingdom of Medes, the leopard to the kingdom of Greece. This is a drawing out in detail of the curse denounced in Leviticus 26:22. I will also send wild beasts among you. The dangers awaited them everywhere. Spiritual adultery led to physical adultery, verses 7 to 9. In verse 7, God adds a circumstance which enhances their guilt. I have fed them to the full, He says, but they have committed adultery and assembled themselves by troops in the harlots' houses. They sinned against the Lord and against their neighbor. Deuteronomy 32:13. It was a symbol of national apostasy. God's bountifulness is contrasted with their apostasy. Deuteronomy 32:15. Prosperity, the gift of God designed to lead men to Him, produced the opposite effect of forgetfulness and filthiness. In verse 8, they are said to be like well-fed horse and neighing at the wives of their neighbors. The purpose was to show with what intense ardor they were devoted to idolatry, and the degrading comparison was made in order to pour contempt on their mad propensity. God, in His displeasure, decides to avenge Judah because they behaved without shame. God uses the Babylonians to take away Jerusalem's battlements. Verses 10-11. This is the permission and authority given to the Chaldeans by God to enter Jerusalem and to ascend the battlements on the walls of Jerusalem to break them down because they were not the Lord's. God disowns them and will not guard them and protect them any more. Destroy, but make not a full end, means destroy the branches, cut down the stem, but do not damage the root. It means leave so many of the people so that the state may be regenerated, for they are the Lord's. This is one of the greatest phrases of Jeremiah's prophecy, reiterating God's pledge to spare a remnant of the rebellious and treacherous nation. The word of the prophecy from the Lord devours. Verses 12-14. Verse 12 says that they belied the Lord. Their atheism grew to so high a degree that they denied God's providence, power, and justice. Verse 13 says that the prophet shall become wind. These are the false prophets who were never inspired or commissioned by God to say anything. The word of God was not in them. Their prophecies, which were their own words, shall vanish in the air. They shall become of no effect. Their sound of threatening will be heard no more. This revenge shall be taken of them. Thus shall it be done unto them means that the evils that they foretell and their ill-omened prophecies shall befall on them. In verse 14, God begins to speak through the prophet. The Lord God of hosts makes His majesty and power known. He clothes His words with a greater terror. As wood is devoured by fire, so shall this people be destroyed by sword and famine, as the word of the prophecy from the Lord is declared. They shall be fuel to God's wrath, which shall be executed by the Chaldean army, that shall consume and eat them up like fire. His words would destroy the false prophets and the people who believed them. The coming of a terrible enemy, verses 15-19. A mighty nation gets ready to destroy Judah, verses 15-17. Verse 15. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation, it is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandest what they say. The Babylonian monarchy began in the times of Nimrod, Genesis 10:10, and therefore must be that ancient nation of great power and experience. Chaldee or Chaldean Aramaic was the language of the Chaldean dynasty of Babylonia. The Chaldee, which though a dialect of the Hebrew, is so very difficult in its words and construction that in hearing it spoken, they could not possibly understand the meaning of what was said. Speech is an excellent way by which the affection is readily communicated and is the bond of human society. Not knowing the language of that ancient nation Babylon, which is on its way to bring calamity, was part of the judgment threatened. The Babylonians would not understand Judah's cries for mercy. Verse 16 says that their quiver is an open sepulchre. They are such exact archers as never to miss their mark. Every arrow was sure to slay one man. Their quiver would be as devouring as an open grave into which many dead are cast. They are all mighty men, strong in body, courageous in spirit, experts in war, and ever victorious. There was no hope of the men of Judah being delivered out of their hands. Verse 17 says that these men would devour and demolish everything that the Judahites owned and trusted in for security. This aggravates the dreadfulness of the judgment. Tit for tat played by God on Judah, verses 18-19. In verse 18, in spite of such a thorough destruction, the Lord promised not to utterly exterminate his people. He would be faithful to his covenant promises, even though his people were unfaithful to their covenant responsibilities. What seems the extremist sentence is tempered by the assurance that it is not absolutely final. It was intended to be reformatory and not merely penal. Verse 19 is tit for tat played by God on Judah. He says, like as ye have forsaken me and served strange gods in your land, so shall ye serve strangers in a land that is not yours. This is a definite prophecy of a captivity. The penalty answers to the sin of Judah. That prophecy was fulfilled when the enemy took the people of Judah into Babylon. The foolish people who forgot the Lord's power. Powers of perceptions unused by the Judahites. Verses 20-21. The house of Jacob and Judah are the same, namely the two tribes of Benjamin and Judah. As of the 10 tribes, that is, the northern kingdom of Israel, they had been carried captive before this time. Such war declarations as in verse 20 were usually proclaimed by heralds of enemy nations so that the cause might appear just. Here, God has become their enemy and declares as though the war had been in the usual manner proclaimed and the armed enemies are already near at hand. Verse 21 says, Hear now this, O foolish people, and without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not. Having the powers of perception, they did not use them. They were willfully blind and obstinately deaf. The prophet strives to impress upon the people the greatness of their sin and the greatness of their folly. Unlike the people of Judah, the seas obey God. Verses 22-23. In verse 22, the greatness and providence of God is shown by the majesty of his work in nature. God takes the sea especially as an example, for there is nothing more terrific than a tempestuous sea. God confines the sea, that enormous mass of waters, and prevents it from overflowing the earth, not by immense mountains and rocks, but by the sand, no particle of which is in cohesion with another. The most tremendous waves cannot displace nor pass over this simple barrier. Though it may be violently agitated by storms and tempests, it does not exceed God's orders. This carries in it an argument and reason why God should be feared. But the men of Judah, after seeing the sea and its waves which obeyed their Maker, feared not the Lord, and so this punishment is a reproof of their great arrogance and folly. Verse 23 says, But this people hath a revolting and rebellious heart. They are revolted and gone. They have abandoned God and are gone farther and farther into transgression. They are gone entirely away from truth and righteousness. Ordinances of nature inverted. Verses 24-25. The Judahites were not influenced and engaged to the fear of God, neither by his greatness in controlling the sea, nor by his goodness of sending former and latter rains in due season and reserving the appointed weeks of the harvest. The former rain in the Hebrew month Markeshvan, that is October, prepares the ground for sowing, and the latter rain in the Hebrew month of Nisan, that is March, prepares the corn for ripening. The appointed weeks of the harvest, or the Feast of Weeks, were those 7 weeks which fell between the Passover and the Pentecost, where the Jews celebrated the Lord's goodness to them in giving them a good harvest. Exodus 34:22. The barley harvest began at the Passover and the wheat harvest at the Pentecost. The Lord gives seasonable harvests according to his appointment by faithfully keeping his promises given to these rebellious people. Leviticus 23:15. But God's people thought that Baal sent the rain at the right time and gave a bountiful harvest. So now, verse 25 says that God inverted the ordinance of nature and kept back the rain from heaven and fruitful season from them because of their iniquity, in order to humble them and bring them to the sense of their sins and an acknowledgement of them. National guilt had caused the suspension of these national mercies. The sins of the people, verses 26 to 31. Spiritual adultery led the people into social oppression and injustice. These verses give an eloquent summary of the prevailing conditions in Judah in the time of Jeremiah, preceding the fall of Jerusalem and the captivity of God's people. They address the sins of four classes of people. 1. The wicked who oppress the poor. 2. The false prophets who deceive. 3. The priests who misbehave. 4. The people with inadequate guidance. Class 1. The sins of the wicked, verses 26 to 30. Two metaphors are used to describe the sins of the wicked men. 1. Snares to trap, verse 26. This is a metaphor taken from hunters who, having fixed their nets, lie down and keep themselves out of sight so that when the birds come, they may be ready to draw and entangle them. Wicked men likewise, by their ill examples, evil policies and counsels, draw people into sin. 2. Cage of birds to trap wild birds, verses 27 to 29. The fowlers put several tame birds in a cage to attract wild birds. They carry these cages when they go for hunting. The tame birds are great in appearance and singing, and thus entice the wild birds. Not knowing that there is a snare around the cage, when the wild ones see the birds, they come and light on the cage and fall into the snare. Jeremiah applies the same similitude to the wicked judges whose houses are full of deceit, that they trap the fatherless and the needy. They become great in worldly things and in the esteem of men. They grow fat and their faces shines because of the fatty oil, delicious food and good living. Deuteronomy 32:15. They are bribed by the rich and they pervert justice. The Jews had become so lethargic that they disregarded all reproofs and threatenings. Hence, God rouses them with great vehemence and says in verse 29, "Shall I not visit for these things, saith the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this?" It is the proper duty of God, the righteous judge, to punish the wicked and relieve the helpless and the oppressed. Note the rhetoric questions, "Shall I not?" asked by God twice in a figure of speech called erotesis, whereby a question is asked in confident expectation of a negative answer. Class 2. The sins of the prophets, verses 30-31a. Strange crimes and horrible trespasses have been committed in the land. So prodigious and stupendous was their crime that it was beyond the apprehension of man to conceive, and so shameful and filthy was it as not to be expressed in words. The false prophets predicted peace and prosperity, that they may please both the princes and the people. They said that they would not be carried captive into Babylon, contrary to what Jeremiah and the other true prophets of the Lord had predicted. They deceived and encouraged the people in their wickedness. Class 3. The sins of the priests, verse 31b. The priests lended themselves to the deceits of the ambitious false prophets to gain influence over the people. They governed the people according to the words of the false prophets. They misused their influence and power and fed on the riches of the Lord's house. Class 4. The plight of the people, verse 31c. The prophets and the priests united to deceive and ruin the people. The prophets gave out false predictions. By their means, the priests got the government of the people into their own hands. With all religious restraint and reproofs out of the way, the whole Jewish nation at once fell into the pursuit of the selfish and lustful goals of the prophets and the priests. With no adequate guidance, they quickly degenerated into a nation of idolaters, oppressors, and debauchees. When the time for punishment came, the prophets and the priests would realize their mistake, but it would be too late to change their behavior. They would not know what to do then. Jeremiah chapter 5 questions. Jeremiah chapter 5 answers.